Story 1. I had a saddle pulmonary embolism. The doctor later told me it was the biggest clot he had ever seen. I cannot confirm for sure, but I remember hearing a voice say, "Sit down in the chair." As soon as I did, I lost consciousness. Felt as if my body was lifting into the air. I felt both heavy and extremely light at the same time. I woke up covered in cold sweat. I spent a month in the intensive care unit after that. Story 2. Nothing but calm relaxation. I woke up with a half beard, sore, and down 15 pounds after a mountain bike accident with massive head trauma almost 7 years ago. I didn't remember the next 2 months, but I fully recovered. This blew up. Thank you for the support. Reddit, wear helmets. I was wearing a helmet, although it was not a full-face one. The impact point was between my eyebrows, and the helmet saved my life. It split in half, and I still have a small scar from the accident. I picked the song for the video, and Quiet Riot fit the on-screen action perfectly. I am in my mid-40s now. I was in my late 30s at the time of the crash. I broke both wrists and a few bones in one hand. Search and rescue and my brothers-in-law found me around 6 to 8 hours after the crash in the middle of the night. I have no memory of the bike ride, crash, rescue, or the week in the hospital, but I found some video about a year later. I returned to work 2 months later as a senior financial analyst. I was mostly recovered but still had limited memory of the 2 months prior. I had to focus on mental tasks. For example, the doctor would show me a picture of a whale and ask what it was. My mind would say whale, but I couldn't communicate that. I'd say, "Oh yeah, it's a fish and it's big, and they eat little fish, lots of different kinds of them." The doctor would then ask what it is. It took me 4 to 6 months to answer that question correctly. It was 2 years before I fully recovered. Mountain bikers, here is some technical talk. I ride a 29-inch hardtail with stock front suspension. I enjoy cross-country trails, but I don't do downhill technical rides or jumping. For the crash, I was borrowing my brother's 26-inch full suspension bike, which was super small and had a springy suspension both front and rear, throwing me over the handlebars. The helmet had multi-directional impact protection system. Kudos to the comments on YouTube. Also, wear helmets. Story 3. I experienced a cardiac arrest and had no pulse for 13 minutes. I was kept alive with cardiopulmonary resuscitation and eventually shocked back to life with a defibrillator. I regained consciousness several times but kept slipping back into unconsciousness. There was nothing there, just brief moments of blackness. A woman performed CPR for 40 minutes, but it felt like a second. However, I did have a strong feeling of not wanting to die or leave my life. Story 4. At one point, I was riding my bike, and the next I felt intense pressure on my back and neck, followed by darkness. I woke up in the emergency room, and the doctor said a van had run over my chest and neck, and my heart had stopped for 3 minutes. Literally, nothing happened while I was dead. I've been knocked out and had strange dreams each time, but this experience was just nothing, and then I was back, as if I had simply had a dreamless sleep. Story 5. I was gone, not even blackness, just nothing. I overdosed on fentanyl-laced cocaine. I woke up staring at the ceiling with firefighters surrounding me, who had administered 4 shots of naloxone. I had a respiratory-induced cardiac arrest. I'm not sure how long I was out. I didn't know what was happening when I came to, but I passed out again shortly after being strapped in and carried down the stairs to the ambulance. Later, I woke up in the hospital to a nurse giving me a lot of sass, which I deserved, for being reckless and almost dying. That was my second overdose. The first time, I was in the hospital getting dialysis for kidney failure because of the same foolishness. I don't do drugs anymore. That life is behind me. Story 6. Honestly, it was rather disappointing. My heart stopped for 9 minutes in the military. I remember waking up in the morning, putting my feet on the floor, blinking, and then I woke up in the hospital. I don't remember anything about it. Story 7. A few years ago, my heart hit 180 beats per minute and would not go down. A trip to the emergency room in New York City resulted in a dozen young doctors standing around as a couple of experienced physicians decided to administer a shot of adenosine. Technically, I had atrial flutter. This drug stops your heart for several seconds in a controlled environment and is intended to restart the heart with the correct rhythm. They stood by with paddles and gave the shot, saying this may not feel comfortable. I was conscious as my heart stopped. I could hear people around me and feel tears fall down my face. The best way to describe the next few seconds was a wave of impending doom. But that is mild. It was a huge wave, a powerful enveloping feeling. I was quite awake, although technically flatlining. I could only think that whatever was about to happen was not going to be good. No lights, no angels, just a sense of dread, like veering off the center lane at 80 miles per hour and being 5 feet from the front of a truck. Then I woke up. In total, it was about 10 seconds, but felt like an eternity. The drug didn't work, and I spent the weekend in the hospital and ended up having an ablation. All good. Story 8. Not much. I felt as if I time traveled. I was run over by a truck and bled to death on the side of the road, then had to be revived. One moment I was looking behind me and saw the truck right before it hit me, thinking, what just happened? Then I remember a massive force, and I was knocked out when my head hit the ground. After that, I was in an ambulance with blood everywhere, and someone was trying to talk to me after I felt a huge electric shock. Then I lost consciousness again. Next, I was in a hospital and had just woken up from emergency surgery to save my life. There were no bright lights, no dreams, and no visions. If I had died, I would have simply ceased to exist. Story 9. When I was 10, I experienced a cardiac arrest and spent the rest of the summer in the hospital. I don't remember everything, but I know that when I came back, I was unable to speak for a while and had to relearn how to live. It has been 10 years since then, and I have a permanent back injury from lying in the hospital for most of that summer. Story 10. At first, I felt panic, but then I remembered that I had enough time to think something along the lines of, oh my God, this is how I die. Following that, an overwhelming feeling of calm, peace, and acceptance washed over me, and then there was nothing at all. It was just like sleeping without any dreams. I didn't experience my life flashing before my eyes or anything like that. I just checked out for a while. Story 11. I had an experience that I don't often share because I try not to remember that period in my life, and I hold this memory very sacred. This experience left a lasting impression on me. In 2017, after consuming a bottle of alcohol followed by bleach, drain cleaner, and over 150 benzodiazepines, I cannot fully articulate what I went through. It is difficult to find the right words. There was no pain while consuming this concoction. I just felt like someone sucked all the air out of my chest, and there was a bubble stuck in my throat. A friend trusted their instinct and called emergency services. I had passed out and aspirated on my vomit, which burned through the carpet and the underlying padding. I remember paramedics pulling my tongue out of my mouth and hearing someone say that I wasn't going to make it. It felt like I had just fallen asleep, but it was that kind of sleep where you know you're asleep. Initially, there was nothing. It was darkness. I felt separated from myself, like I wasn't in my physical form. It's hard to explain, but I felt like I was only my spirit without flesh and blood. It was as if I was transported to a different dimension or world, and somehow, I found myself in this beautiful meadow. The meadow was the most beautiful scene imaginable. There was a little stream in the distance and a forest beyond it. I remember just enjoying this moment and the beauty of it all. It may sound cliché, but this meadow was incredibly beautiful. All I felt was love and appreciation for everything. I also sensed I wasn't alone, but it was a comforting presence. An orb appeared, conveying love in its purest form. The orb communicated with me telepathically. The conversation involved me acknowledging the beauty that surrounded me and feeling like this was where I wanted to be. I felt like I was given a choice between staying there or returning to reality and my body. I really wanted to stay, but I thought of my siblings and the damage my death would cause them. The moment I thought of my siblings, I felt as though I was told, "You made your choice." I felt like I was beamed back to my body, which had been in the intensive care unit in a medically induced coma. I truly feel that I could have stayed. I really wanted to stay and often feel a sort of homesickness and longing for that place. I can proudly say I'm glad I didn't stay. I will also add that was the last time I attempted to end my life. Story 12. I almost drowned last year. It happened so quickly, yet it felt surprisingly calm. In the end, I lost consciousness. The real distress came after I was rescued and began to understand what had happened. I still have nightmares about it, and I am now afraid of water. Story 13. A yellow cottage is surrounded by a wildly overgrown flower garden in the midst of a green field. I felt a presence behind me, and a voice gave me a stern talking to for being there too early. I woke up with a strong sense of duty towards my loved ones, including those I had not met yet. I must have been out for maybe a few minutes at most, but it felt like I was out for significantly longer. It flipped a switch in me. I am still depressed, but suicide is absolutely not an option anymore. It is not my place to decide when I go, since my life affects others. Story 14. I woke up in a place I didn't understand. It was like a plain with no structures, extending to the horizon in every direction. I thought, okay, this is weird. There was a noise, kind of like an irritating hum in the background. I wasn't sure what it was. Then, I saw someone walking toward me from a long distance. I thought I recognized him, but it took a while for him to approach me. As he came closer, the hum grew louder, and I realized it was something unpleasant. I didn't want to know what it was. Finally, I recognized him. He was my old boss who had always been nice to me and had looked out for me before he passed away. As he walked by, he said casually, "Oh, that's just Steven. He's okay." And the noise faded away. Story 15. Almost dying was the most peaceful part of my life. It's not scary when it happens. It doesn't hurt. What I remember was a surreal experience, fading into the best peace I've ever felt, followed by another surreal experience. This occurred over approximately 4 hours. Story 16. 23 minutes of work on me. If I had not suffered a heart attack in my clinic, I would not be here. I remember talking with one of my friends at a job we both held in an emergency room 35 years ago, just chatting in a doorway. We looked into the room. There were 12 people working on me. I looked at him and said I was going to see what was happening with the unfortunate person in the bed. I walked around everyone. I saw my mom and grandma, both deceased, sitting in front of the bed as I walked past. I reached the other side of the bed, realized it was me, and thought, "Oh no, I guess I need to go back." I leaned toward myself and had a very realistic dream. I woke up a week later, thought I was in 6th grade for the next week, and then slowly regained my bearings. 3 years later, I was 98% rehabilitated. They had told my wife I was supposed to be a vegetable. Story 17. I had a positive experience, but my favorite near-death experience story is told in an episode of the podcast Euphemet, Episode 10, Lives. The narrator is not religious. He describes disconnection and consciousness in a fascinating and frightening way. As for me, while I am not sure of my exact age, I can recall a time when I drowned in an apartment pool as a very young child. There is a documentary series on Prime titled Death and Back. A woman describes her experience of drowning as a child, and what she shares closely resembles my own experience. I have never heard anyone else mention the light from below while drowning, but that is how it was for me too. I do not remember seeing my body as she describes, but I transitioned from blackness to dark blues and progressively brighter light. I experienced an energetic warmth and comfort, an unconditional love. Brilliant gold, then white replaced the blue, and I was met by a sense of ethereal awareness. However, my memory ends there, apart from being revived. Since love was an unfamiliar experience in life at that time, returning came with very conflicting emotions. Not long after that, I impulsively attempted to jump out of a moving vehicle and off a cliff. As a child without an awareness of potential consequences, I just wanted to return to the peace of that other existence. I am thankful to know that we go to a place of greater connection. The decades since, along with a few enlightening experiences, have shown me that we are never truly separated from anything, despite the density in between. We simply shift our awareness, and the weight we feel inside becomes light. Story 18. I had a rather strange near-death experience because I felt things in place of my son. I don't believe in life after death or spirits, but I am convinced that the brain is an absolutely fascinating organ capable of very powerful dreams. At the maternity ward, my son, who was only a few days old, was very ill. That night, I entrusted him to the midwives. I didn't feel strong enough to watch over him. I wanted to sleep a little. During the night, I felt an intense cold, so severe that I could only shake uncontrollably, much more than a normal shiver from cold. I couldn't call for help or move. I was paralyzed. I thought, death is coming for my son. If I let it pass, it will take him. I fought as hard as I could to stop the sensation. Felt like I had fallen into a frozen lake. Then it passed and I fell back asleep. Sometime later, a pediatrician woke me up to tell me that my son was in critical condition and that they had been trying to save him since the middle of the night without understanding what was happening. His body was giving up. He was transferred to the hospital. The emergency doctor told me later that she thought she wouldn't be able to save him and that he held on beyond all expectations. I also saw him in critical condition, and I still wonder how he could endure that. Apart from the harrowing situation, that night made me think a lot. Did I hear something to inspire that dream? My room was across from the pediatrician's room. Anyway, I've never found any other testimonies like this. For those wondering, my son is alive. He underwent open-heart surgery that saved his life. In our misfortune, we were lucky that the department where he was admitted had one of the world's leading specialists in his cardiac condition. The entire team was well-versed in this specific pathology. They understood what was happening within minutes, even though it was a very rare case. It was really a close call. Story 19. Nothing. I just woke up in a different place, a hospital bed, hours later, and found a man inserting a catheter. There was a complete absence of experience between those two moments. Story 20. I had an anaphylactic shock. It was incredibly peaceful and I felt love. I was in a tunnel and making my way toward the light when I heard my deceased brother say, "No, go back. It isn't your time." I woke up in an ambulance after the epinephrine and adrenaline had been administered. Story 21. I died in my shower in my early 20s while my ex-boyfriend was in there with me. He reported that I collapsed, was not breathing, and was blue-gray. He said it was quite a while that I was gone, to myself and the paramedics. I had no pulse. What I remember is floating down a black tunnel with a large square light at the far end of it. As I floated closer, I could see silhouettes of people on both sides of me. They had no facial features or voices, just dark shapes staring at me as I floated past. The closer I got to the light, the more I saw it was a square window, revealing a gorgeous sunny day on the other side. Tall grass swayed in the breeze beneath clear blue skies with clouds. It was beautiful, but as I got closer, I saw my dog who had passed away, running down the hill, stopping to look at me. He trotted closer to the window as I reached the end of the tunnel. It felt like all I had to do was climb over and into that beautiful scenery, and I intended to do so. However, he came up to me, tilted his head, and all I heard was, "Not now." That's when I was flying backward through the tunnel, faster and faster until I flew back into my body. I leaned forward and vomited heavily into the bathtub while my ex blinked in bewilderment. He had called emergency services, and I felt so weak while he tried to get me out of the tub and put clothes on me. The entire time, I was apparently muttering my dog's name, asking where he was. My ex said, "He's been gone for a long time." To this day, I know my dog, who was always considered my sole dog by family and friends, is the reason I didn't cross the barrier. It wasn't my time, but I still think about that gorgeous meadow from time to time, how peaceful and serene it seemed, and the feeling it invoked. Death felt peaceful. I'm agnostic with my fair share of paranormal experiences, but this one still makes me ponder all the possibilities of what lies on the other side. Story 22. It happened quickly and was surprisingly calm, similar to falling asleep after a long day. I was given adenosine due to a cardiac issue, and the purpose of the medication is to stop and restart the heart. However, when I received the dose, I flatlined for longer than expected and needed defibrillation and cardiopulmonary resuscitation to be revived. All I remember seeing was an infinite number of stars, like looking up into the universe. I was raised Catholic, but after that experience, I fully accepted the idea of reincarnation. Story 23. I think people are so used to being spectators of death, watching others die while life goes on because they themselves haven't died, that they cannot fathom death as a true end. Story 24. My dad was dead for a few minutes due to a heart attack. He saw a bright light and explained that he felt as if he was moving forward. He saw silhouettes of people lined up on the sides, and he could see them moving to get a better look at who was coming. Just as he was about to see the first face, the medical team used a defibrillator on him and brought him back. He said it was the most peaceful feeling he ever experienced, and he is not afraid to die. For anyone who might claim that he was seeing the paramedics, 1. His eyes were shut the entire time. He saw rows of people rather than the 2 paramedics who arrived. Story 25. Well, this is enough existential dread for me today. So I'm going to cope by thinking that the reason a lot of people see or feel nothing is that whatever deity they believe in knew it wasn't their time and didn't want them to experience heaven just yet. Story 26. I remember being carried on the wind high above the ground. The air was warm and smelled of spices. It was night, except for a warm light in the sky that I was being drawn toward. The buildings below had flat roofs, and I could see candlelight from the windows. I did not feel alone but could not see anyone else. Apart from the sound of the wind in my ears, there was a constant sound of grinding stone, like the sound of millstones grinding grain. It was calm, gentle, and unforgettable. Story 27. I can share my experience. I was giving birth and it was going wrong. I was bleeding out, and my baby was showing severe signs of fetal distress. I thought I was on a boat on a quiet lake, drifting further out into the silvery white. I could hear distant voices, but only just. It was very peaceful and I was drifting away, until I heard my sister's voice saying, "We're doing a cesarean." And I didn't care at all. Apparently, the room was crowded with people rushing about, but I honestly thought it was just my sister and me. There was a happy outcome. My beautiful girl and I survived. Since then, I have often thought that I really hope all the women who died in childbirth back in the day, there were so many, had an experience like mine. They just kept drifting off into the silver, calm, and content. Story 28. I was 5 years old when I nearly drowned on a family holiday. My sister found me and revived me, but my parents never acknowledged the incident. It took me decades to process not only what I experienced, but also that I experienced it. I felt as though I was surrounded by other souls, becoming part of the universe. The next thing I remember is my sister shouting and beating my chest, and then I was back at the beach. It was overwhelming for a child to process. However, as an adult, I realized that this experience has shaped my beliefs in quantum mechanics and the understanding that matter always exists, even as it changes form. Story 29. I saw the light and followed it into what I can only describe as a large hotel atrium lobby, all white. Every deceased person I knew was there, along with many I did not know but recognized from old family photos. My grandfather said, "What are you doing here? It's not your time yet." Then I drifted away and woke up in bed with a jolt. The thing I will never forget is the overwhelming feeling of love in that room, with everyone there being happy and content. It could have just been a dream. I don't know, but it has never happened again, and I have never experienced anything like it. Story 30. Not so much that I died, but I had a near-death experience. When I was 19 years old, I bought myself a motorcycle. I had been riding for about 6 months and felt pretty confident on it. This confidence is what almost killed me that day. It was a sunny day in September 2009, and I had just gotten out of my college class around 3 p.m. I put on my helmet, my gloves, and my backpack, and I thought to myself that I needed a haircut as I started making my way toward the location, keeping in mind that getting on the freeway would be the quickest way there. Once I got on the freeway, it was pretty congested, but I decided I could zoom by the cars and get there in no time. As I saw my exit approaching and realized I could possibly pass the car in front of me, I sped up and passed it at a high rate of speed. making the exit. Thinking I could maneuver easily around the curved corner that was about to come, I pressed on my brakes, and my motorcycle went into a high-speed wobble. At this point, I was thrown off the bike and vaguely remember falling off. I must have hit my head pretty hard because I blacked out. When I came to, I was sliding on my back at a high rate of speed on the freeway exit. This next part seemed like a movie, but everything around me felt like it was in slow motion. As I was sliding, I passed cars left and right, and all I could hear was the screeching of their tires. Once my body gained more momentum, I rolled several times until I came to a complete stop. To my left, there was just dirt and grass, and to my right were the cars on the freeway. As I lay on the asphalt, looking at my injuries, something made me look left. As I did, I saw a blonde lady with blue eyes in all-white business attire walking toward me in the dirt and grass area. Keep in mind, there wasn't a car anywhere near her. It was just barren land. As she approached me, she asked, "Were you the one that called?" I started telling her how I could not have called, as I was just involved in an accident. She repeated, "Were you the one that called?" Before I could answer her, I heard a door slam and a man yelling, "Are you all right?" As I turned to my right to tell him I was okay, I quickly looked back to my left, and the lady was gone. I only lasted 3 hours in the hospital with no broken bones, just road rash. I believe that if I had told that lady that I did call, I would have died right there on that freeway. Story 31. Nothing. I woke up feeling like I had been hit by a truck and was on a lot of medication. But now, I'm not afraid of it anymore. Unfortunately, I've come close a couple more times. Now, I just feel sad for my family when it happens. Story 32. In a coma for 2 days, I felt no consciousness, and the 2 days felt like 2 minutes. There was zero awareness of anything around me. Story 33. It was dark, and I felt like I was floating, but I could feel hands all over me as if I was being held. It was calming, and I still dream about it. Story 34. Paramedic here. I've seen many people come back to life through emergency intervention and cardiopulmonary resuscitation. I've witnessed deeply religious individuals pray to God as they approach death. Once they regain consciousness, we often ask, "What happened? What did you see?" The answer is usually a look of confusion followed by, "Nothing. No dreams. No bright lights. No golden gates. Nothing." I saw a deeply religious man cry because he felt in that moment that God did not exist. Story 35. I went to bed and woke up in a hospital while being pushed in a wheelchair. I found out I had a car accident about a month ago, and my fiancée had died. I also learned that it was just over 2 months after I went to sleep that night. Story 36. I was poisoned by a college roommate and died in my first class of the morning. I had severe pain in my stomach and intestines, and then went into an overwhelming sweat. In a matter of seconds, I soaked through my clothing and grew so weak that I could not keep my head up. I got up to try and go to the bathroom, made it to the front of the classroom, and collapsed. I remember the cold floor feeling comforting, but the weakness that made it hard to keep my head upright also made it difficult to breathe. I blacked out a moment later when the pain in my stomach intensified. The only reason I am alive is that a registered nurse was acting as a substitute teacher for an English class. Story 37. I'm not sure if this counts, but I died 3 times as a baby. I was born weighing 1 pound and 9 ounces, and my heart was not functioning well. I spent my first 4 months in an incubator at the Ronald McDonald House, and I would flatline unexpectedly just to keep things interesting at the hospital. The doctors had to resuscitate me as if I were a broken phone with a low battery. So, yes, just the perks of being an infant-sized potato. People love to ask, "Did you see God? Did you see the light? Was there a tunnel?" My answer is always no. I was a literal baby. I didn't even know I was alive, let alone what heaven was. My whole existence was basically just me existing in a warm plastic box, trying not to die. Heaven didn't make the list of things to think about when you're 1 pound. I didn't even know I had fingers until I was about 3. So no great spiritual awakening, just a really bad heart and a lot of resuscitations. Story 38. My mother's older sister, my aunt, had her tonsils removed when she was 18 and started bleeding profusely. She found herself in the corner of the room, near the ceiling, watching them perform CPR as they were losing her. She heard everything so clearly. Next thing she knew, she was coming to and told the doctor who saved her everything. He apparently turned completely pale and was so shocked he had to leave the room. I believe her 100%. She was a very honest person and would never lie about something like that. Story 39. Nothing, and it was almost instant, no time to panic or think this is it. It was here, then it was gone, and then it came back after approximately 45 minutes of cardiopulmonary resuscitation. There was absolutely nothing. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation left me with chronic chest trauma. 2 years later, I am still in severe pain. Story 40. For me, it was unusual. I am not religious. I didn't experience tunnels or bright lights, but I had my life play out in front of my eyes in what I can describe as a split second. It was reviewed without judgment, and I was shown when I had made the wrong choices and how they affected someone else's life. After that, it was only what I can describe as complete love and peace. For the first time in my life, I felt whole, and it felt like I was back where I belonged. It's hard to convey that feeling accurately. The only situation that evokes something similar is when you fall in love with someone for the first time, and during the first few months you feel this joy and glow from within. Story 41. In 2019, just a few days before Thanksgiving, I had a late-night workout at my office gym. Afterward, I decided to use the sauna and take a cold shower, as usual, to wake myself up before heading to my dad's cabin for a discussion. However, the moment I stepped into the sauna, I felt dizzy and fainted. As I fell, it felt like I was free-falling at thousands of miles per hour. In that moment, my life flashed before my eyes, and I became an observer of my past. I recalled several childhood accidents, including a near miss with boiling milk on the stove, where I had tipped a pan and burned my left hand. I had to go to the hospital and spent hours alone until my mom arrived. Another memory was of falling down 24 steep concrete stairs, where I could clearly see my older sibling pushing me when I was just 4 or 5. Although I never went to the hospital for that incident, I still bear scars from it. The smell of spring flowers from that hill remains vivid in my memory. During this experience in the sauna, I felt intense pain on the right side of my face, neck, shoulder, and hand as I instinctively protected myself. I had fallen near the steam pipe, and the heater was set high. In that moment, I was ready to let go of life, but then I saw the faces of my beautiful wife and our 6-year-old daughter. It sparked a fierce determination to fight and escape the sauna. I'm not sure how long I was unconscious, but when I came to, I had lost skin on the right side of my head, ear, neck, shoulder, and arm. I went into shock but still planned to make the trip to the cabin, feeling no pain. For 3 days, I resisted going to the hospital, still processing my childhood memories and feeling a desire to end it all. Eventually, after my wife's insistence, I went to the hospital. The experience of having the nurse scrub my wounds was unpleasant, but I didn't remember the pain. It felt like reliving past trauma in a way that led to a cathartic release. My life changed drastically after the accident. I went from running a successful construction business, earning $3.5 million a year with over 20 employees, to staying home for 2 years, focusing on my health and spending time with my family. While I was physically present, I often felt emotionally distant. My family became my motivation to keep going, even as I struggled with deep depression and isolation. Reflecting on my childhood trauma, I now understand that I had been sexually abused before those accidents, which I had suppressed for so long. This trauma affected my ability to connect with others, and I didn't engage in any relationships until I met my wife at age 20. She is the only woman in my life. I watched friends share stories of their childhood abuse and their struggles with sexual desires, and I realized I might have followed a similar path if not for my experiences. In a way, life is unfolding as it should. In the aftermath of the accident, I used marijuana as a crutch for a while, but I eventually moved past that. I found joy in doing labor work again, tapping into a suppressed part of myself. Interestingly, I had to write with my left hand while my right arm was bandaged, And now my left-handed writing is beautiful, a stark contrast to my previous handwriting. This experience has brought me closer to spirituality and a belief in the afterlife and karma. I now believe that I don't need anything in life, as desire can be a sin. I understand that this mindset is essential to avoid being reincarnated and to find peace in my next life, whatever that may be. I feel complete and ready to leave this world without the need to relive this earthly existence. Each day is a gift, and I wake up prepared for whatever challenges the day may bring. I live now for my family and serve them wholeheartedly to my best ability. Story 42. I fell from the roof while playing with a neighbor. The next thing I remember is seeing him carry me in his arms to my house. Then I found myself somehow trapped in a mirror in my room, watching my body on a bed before being pulled into it. It was a strange experience. I am skeptical about it, but that is how I remember it. I don't think I was dead. It may have been some kind of coma, but my family lived in the area without access to medical help, so I guess I was lucky. Story 43. Nothing, just no light whatsoever. It was pure darkness, although I felt peaceful and warm on the inside. I remember having an asthma attack in elementary school. I was put on a gurney and then woke up in a hospital bed, with my principal holding my mother as she cried. Story 44. I died at 2 and was revived with no memories. I died on the surgery table at 26, recalling a feeling of floating and being in a black void. Then my eyebrows became itchy, and I woke up. I had been in a coma for 4 hours. Story 45. I bled out during my cesarean section. I heard the blood streaming onto the floor and had multiple blood transfusions. Nothing. I felt and saw nothing. I wish I did. I woke up 2 days later and was amazed that I was still here. Story 46. I don't remember being brought back to life. I just remember feeling at peace knowing that I couldn't get the air I needed and that I had no options left. I was calm about it. I took a deep breath of water and watched everything fade away. There was no panic, no struggle, just peacefulness. Everything faded to black, and that was pretty much it. I drowned when I was around 4 years old. My mother found me floating in my grandparents' pool face down. She jumped in, pulled me out, checked for a pulse, and started cardiopulmonary resuscitation, as she was a nurse. I had no pulse and was turning blue. The only serious thing that happened was that my sternum broke while cardiopulmonary resuscitation was being administered, which is common when small children receive this treatment. Story 47. I woke up feeling cold, shivering uncontrollably. Narcan brought me back. I had an overdose, and fortunately, paramedics arrived in time. That was in October 2015. I will be celebrating 10 years this October. Story 48. My mother saw her deceased relatives telling her it is too soon and that she must continue to live because she will have children. It felt wholesome at the time, but now she seems to be in a mood of, I've raised my children so I can go. She believes she has seen the afterlife and is not scared. We want her around for her grandchildren. Story 49. It happened when I was around 10. I choked on a sausage link in front of my sister at the table and had to be revived. I remember my sister crying, one was praying, and then the next moment I saw tall grass being moved by the wind. I'm allergic to grass, but it felt like I was instantly pushed into a hill with tall grass swaying in the wind. The next thing I knew, I woke up in a hospital bed with a Casper balloon tied to the bed frame and my mom in tears. All these years later, I still have that deflated balloon folded in a drawer, and I love the view of swaying grass. Story 50. As I died, I felt incredibly at peace, which is ironic because until that moment, I had been feeling afraid of death. I was able to reach over and hold my best friend's hand, telling her that I love her and to inform my son and my loved ones that I loved them with my whole being. Then I felt an overwhelming coldness and died. Everything went black, transitioning from darkness to nothingness. I regained consciousness after they resuscitated me and performed surgery to repair the blown femoral artery that caused my death. I lost my fear of death. I'm not afraid of dying anymore. My body knows how to let go peacefully. I will be ready when it is my time. Story 51. 2 days before my 17th birthday, my sister overdosed and took her own life. I was distraught as anyone would be, and I struggled to sleep. I had a bunk bed and slept on the bottom bunk. On the first night after her death, I was emotional and restless. I rolled over and looked at my chair, and she was there. She sat in my chair with her head down, hair in front of her face, arms splayed on the armrest, wearing some sort of gown. I froze and stared at her until the sun rose, and once the light entered my room, she vanished. I cannot describe it. She just wasn't there anymore. I would have recognized her anywhere, so I was sure it was her. The next night, I slept on the top bunk, but I was scared and still struggling to sleep. I wanted to make sure she wasn't in the chair again, so I peeked over the bed, and she wasn't there. She lay splayed out on the ground, hair in front of her face again, looking up in the same gown. I watched her until the sun rose, and just like that, she was gone. I don't understand why she would just disappear. I blinked, and she was gone. On the third night, I lay on the top bunk, too scared to look over the railing again to see if she was there. I tried to sleep and finally did. My dream was strange, though. I found myself in a doctor's office from the 1990s. There were 2 rows of blue cushioned seats in the middle, some on the opposite wall, and some on the wall I was against. They had round wooden armrests and feet. The walls were white, plain, and bare. Only one door was near the far right corner. It was blue with a small window that shone the brightest, whitest light I had ever seen. There was a receptionist's desk right next to it with large glass windows that also let in the same light, but no one was there. Just light. I looked across the room and saw a man sitting in a chair. He hadn't been there before. He wore a medical gown with little blue and red triangle shapes. His head was shaved but not bald. He looked at the door, then slowly turned to look at me, and his irises were gold. Not cartoonishly bright, just a normal brightness, but gold. He tilted his head, as if curious about me, and said, "Why aren't you breathing?" In the calmest voice. I immediately took the deepest breath of my life and woke up. I guess I had stopped breathing at some point during my sleep. I will never forget him, the room, or my sister from those nights. I never saw my sister again after that. Story 52. About 14 years ago, I was in Mexico with my family. It was the first time all 4 of us had gone on a vacation together. On Christmas Day, my cousin woke me up and asked if I wanted to go to the mountains with their ATVs. My family owns a local shop that delivers water jugs, milk cartons, and other items to the people who live up there for an added fee. My mom advised me not to go, but foolishly, I said I was on vacation. It was my first time on a manual ATV, so I took a short ride to get used to it. Long story short, on the way down, I felt confident when my cousin suggested we race. I excitedly agreed. Unfortunately, I accidentally shifted up instead of down and ended up doing a wheelie off the cliff, falling about 40 to 50 feet. I broke my wrist with the bone popping out and my wrist touching my forearm, broke my elbow, and ultimately the ATV rolled onto my neck. I was in a coma for just under 2 weeks, but strangely, I remember everything. The best way to describe it is that I felt like I was near my body but watching it from the outside. When we arrived at the hospital, all I could see was the back of my family's heads and my body on the hospital bed. There was a man who had been in a horse racing accident and had seriously injured his knees. When I came to, I asked my mom how his surgery had gone, and she was shocked that I knew about it. Story 53. I don't know if I died for sure, but I passed out while driving sober for an unknown reason. The last thing I remember is my head hitting the driver's side door window and screaming. I can still hear the scream, then everything went black, and I heard a voice asking me if I wanted to stay or go. In line with my personality, I kept responding in my head, "I don't know. I don't know." It kept asking, and I finally said, "Stay." I woke up with the car fresh out of the ditch on the opposite side of the road. The ditch almost in line with the middle of the rear bumper, the car straddling it, headlights on, in front of a large rock. I got out and checked the ditch, which was all torn up, about 6 to 8 feet deep with tire marks and ruts. There wasn't a single dent or mud-caked running board or wheel well. It was wild. I didn't tell anyone for a week when I finally, acting on impulse, decided to take my sister to the ditch so she could be a witness to the aftermath of whatever happened. I've only told about 3 people this story, and it was around 20 years ago. Story 54. I choked when I was about 10. I had a dream where I felt an unusual dissociated feeling, swimming in the air with video game-like characters. When my father managed to unblock my airways, I came back and immediately said, "Why did you wake me up?" It was the best dream ever. It was almost the same feeling I experienced while using dimethyltryptamine. The same loving and accepting sensation that felt like pure love. Later, I read that dimethyltryptamine is produced when our brain goes into an oxygen-starved state to protect our gray matter. So, dimethyltryptamine is basically a near-death experience. Story 55. This was 40 years ago, but we were poor, like dirt poor. No car, no money, extended family, all living in a tiny house. When I was 10, my kidneys failed. I gained water weight and ballooned up like I had eaten the wrong piece of candy. I had to be rushed to the hospital in the city, which was an hour's drive that we didn't have. I basically rolled around in the back of a cargo van until we got there. I spent weeks in the hospital, and my mother gave them permission to experiment on me with new treatments in lieu of payments they probably knew they would never receive. This turned out to be fortunate because the treatment they gave me then is now the standard operating procedure for my particular condition. During my time in the hospital, I often went several days without a visitor or family member present because we were poor. No one had cars, money, or could take time off work. About 3 days in, I went into cardiac failure and had to be resuscitated. Obviously, at 10, I didn't know I was dying, and I didn't find out what had happened until I was around 15 or 16. But here is what I remember. It was as if I was standing to the side of myself. A dozen doctors and nurses rushed into the room, lifted me into a sitting position from lying down, connected me to various machines, and chaos ensued. I wasn't scared, just confused and trying to be good, as a child would. It was chaotic and frightening, and no one was talking to me, only around me as they navigated their duties. Just when I felt the urge to cry, I noticed a woman in the doorway of my room. She was dressed in an adult-sized version of the gown I wore, and she was smiling. She was pretty, in her early 30s, with shoulder-length brown curly hair, and she waved. I waved back. She smiled and told me I was going to be okay and not to worry. The doctors were going to help. She advised me to close my eyes and rest if I wanted to. Being a child, I followed her advice. When I woke up, I was alone in the room. A day had passed, and my family was there. I couldn't talk because of everything attached to my face, but when I finally could, I told them everything. They attributed it to toxic shock, confusion, fear, and dreaming. I kept asking about the woman because she felt like a mother, warm, soothing, and calm. Everything a maternal figure should be. I was told I was dreaming or that she was just another patient because of how she was dressed. So, as a child, I accepted that. But the idea of another patient just hanging out in the doorway while I was dying made no sense. Why could I hear her but not the doctors? Why did she never look at them, only at me? Why would they let her stand there and watch? Then I learned that I had to be resuscitated that day, and it clicked. I had a million questions. Was it toxicity in the blood? Possibly. Was it a dream? I did wake up a day later. Was it the body shutting down to provide me with a peaceful death? That is what typically happens. Was it a kind but nosy patient wanting to calm a scared child? Could be. Was it the spirit of a former patient? I can't say. I do believe in spirits and have seen things I can't explain. Yet, I can still see her face even 40 years later. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.